Welcome to Spectacle on Television Nigeria Today, your foremost program that brings you social, political, and economic program, topics especially. Today we'll be dealing still on the issue of the policy of President Muhammadu Buhari, the minimum wage. Last week we dwelt on it and we couldn't nail it to the finish. Therefore, this morning we'll be looking at the reaction of the Minister of Labour, Dr. Ngige, who came out yesterday strongly giving a stern warning to the 36 state governors to start the implementation. In fact, he said the minimum wage implementation had begun since April 18, 2019. Shortly, we will be introducing our guests who will do justice to the analysis this morning. And after this short break, we will analyze the various indices, economic implication, and productivity of these very policies and why it has to go on now. We talked about the political implication, the economic and productivity implications of the minimum wage, the 30,000 naira increment last week, Friday. Today being Monday, we will be looking at, we will still be looking at that particular prospect and the aspect of the productivity. This minimum wage will introduce into the Nigerian enterprises and civil administration. However, just within the weekend, the Minister of Labour had this to say. Say, new minimum wage, federal government commences payment, issues strong warning to governors. The federal government has revealed that payment of the 30,000 minimum wage started from April 18th and not about to be implemented. The date was when President Muhammadu Buhari signed the Minimum Wage Amendment Act bill into law. The federal government also declared that no governor in the 36 states of the federation will renege on paying the new 30,000 minimum wage. Dr. Chris Ngige, the Minister of Labour and Employment, gave the clarification at the weekend during an interactive session with newsmen in Abuja, where he said and noted that a committee is working out a new template for upward consequential adjustment for those already earning above 30,000. I want you to mark that word, consequential adjustment. Ngige said it is a national law and no governor can say he will not pay. It is a national law and no governor can say he will not pay. Pay what? The minimum wage. The national minimum wage is item 34 on the exclusive legislative list of the third schedule of the 1999 Constitution as amended. Issue of labor is also there and not on the concurrent list. If it is on the concurrent list, then the governors and whoever can say make their own state assembly laws on that. Every state government is now owing workers if they have not started paying the 30,000 minimum wage. He said every governor that have not started paying. August 18th, when the president and the National Assembly passed this bill into law, that governor of that particular state is said to have owned the workers the 30,000 minimum wage. You will look at the legal implication also. The employers are owing workers, effective from 18th of April, a new minimum wage. We are now in a committee working out a template, a new template, with which we will adjust upward the consequential adjustment upstairs for those already earning above 30,000 naira. The minimum wage is for the most vulnerable down the ladder, and that is the man on grade level 1, step 1. So, you must consequentially adjust for the man on grade level 2, grade level 3, grade level 4, and 5, because that man on grade level 1, step 1, has overtaken them with his new payment. That is what we refer to as consequential adjustment. This consequential adjustment touches more the people on the lower ladder, and we are working it out. The negotiation is going on, and is going to be with the joint negotiating council at both the federal and the state level. So, the minimum wage saga is the topic of discussion today, and we are going to have some gentlemen into the studio on the program Spectacle to look at this very policy vividly, and why especially the governors that have not been able to pay the 18,000 minimum wage, how they will be able to pay the 30,000 increment now, the 30,000 minimum wage at the moment. So this morning, I will shortly introduce to you the special guest who will be handling and analyzing this very policy. Stay tuned. Welcome back. With me in the studio, I have from the far left, Comrade Silvanus Okwe. Comrade Silvanus Okwe is a civil rights activist and a political commentator. And in the middle, I have another good economist, Samuel Awolebe Onjefo. Awolebe is an economist and is doing his master's in political economy with the Nasarawa State University, KEFI. Welcome to the studio.
Thank you.
Mr. Silvanus,
thank you.
Welcome to Spectacle on TVN.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you. Now, last week we dwelt on this very topic, the minimum wage. I'll start from you, Mr. Silvanus. And we were talking about the 18,000 that has been reviewed to 30,000, how some governors have not been able to pay. And you list some governors that have not been able to pay. How would they then be able to pay the 30,000 minimum wage? And just yesterday, which is a weekend, the starting of the new week, and on Saturday, the Labour and the Minister of Labour, Dr. Chris Ngige, gave stern warning to governors who have not paid the 30,000 minimum wage as implemented on the 18th of April 2019, that they are already owing 1 month, and that implementation is already there. The president have implemented it, the National Assembly have passed it, and they are already owing. Therefore, all governors who may want to show some lackadaisical attitude of refusal to paying this minimum wage are subject to what? Legal suit. What would you have to say about this now?
Thank you very much. You know, the issue of minimum wage boils down to good governance and the welfare of the engine room of the government. The civil service is the engine room of the government. Without the civil service, the government cannot perform. So it is the political will that will guarantee total implementation of this minimum wage. Every governor has the ability to pay the workers in their states.
They have the ability?
They have the ability.
Apart from the federal allocation?
They have the ability to bring the federal allocation together, all the monies that accrues internally generated revenue. If they are put to judicious use, no governor will owe a worker in Nigeria.
So in essence, you are saying they deliberately refuse to pay.
It is a conscious effort of the governors to deliberately make the civil servants pliable tools that can be exploited during electioneering. What can you call it? When you are owing a civil servant, you are owing civil servants in your state, but you have 50 billion to prosecute elections. During elections, you buy bags of rice for them. Is that money, why wouldn't the money be used judiciously to pay for their hard-earned wages?
Just on that, in Benue, where I came from, the experience we had of recent was the fact that salaries of both civil and public workers, I was once a lawmaker in the third tier, and who led a national protest even against the governor, the administration of Samuel Otom, to Abuja here, demanding our court. So you hit a point there that they made the workers pliable, as subjected them into what penury, such that they could come, give them stipends, gifts, rice, bag of rice, and the worst of it is that their money, the cuts from the salaries and allowances, our allowances were stopped since December 2018, up to the moment that all of us are stepping down. So our monthly allowances were not paid. Talking about the chairman of the local government and councillors within the 276 wards were not paid their allowances. So it is a bizarre thing to know, as you brought that point out, that they made them pliable tools and subjected them to a kind of, not talking about only the civil servants yet. No, the civil servants, these governors also have enough money to prosecute elections, like you said. And one will begin to wonder that it is truly a deliberate effort. So, now, the Minister of Labour said yesterday that an employee who is being owed the 30,000 minimum wage, either by the state governor or by the private firms that the person is working, can go to court and sue such employer. Again, he said that the Ministry of Labour and also Labour, or anybody acting on behalf of the Minister of Labour designated, can also file a legal suit, against such employer if such, issue is tabled before them or it comes to their awareness. So what would you have to say about, workers' right in this respect? Because I know you did part of law.
If Ngige, the Honorable Minister for Labour and Productivity, yes, has said that the law, after its assent to the law by the President, that it has come into force and ought to have been implemented since April, then we take it down from the federal government. When we analyze issues that borders on the welfare of the people, we don't become sympathetic to the authorities.
Exactly.
So we are talking of coming down from the federal government. Have they paid the minimum wage?
The federal government ordered from 18th of April to 19th. So the minister is saying that governors who have not paid for the month of April, the 30,000 minimum wage, are already owing 1 month.
So that means the federal government also is owing 1 month
Yeah.
because they have not paid.
The federal government have commenced. Even that is what I read today. Have commenced.
So many
the
workers
payment.
have not collected. Even coppers whose minimum wage is supposed to be increased to 30,000 have not collected.
Coppers are not included in this.
The
aspect.
Minister of Finance said they are included.
Okay, if they are included, there is an exclusion in this minimum wage. For instance, firms or private firms or even government firms and parastatals, ministries, departments, and agencies whose employees are not up to 25 in number, they are excluded from this injunction. The injunction is in exclusive legislative list number 34. You understand? And therefore, it is not applicable to all facets of the economic productivity in terms of labor force. So what I'm trying to say now, the legal aspect of it, how much of this employment law do employees know, especially their rights?
There is a body that covers all the workers in Nigeria.
As is labor.
We have the Labor Union Congress, the Trade Union Congress, and so on. If they feel that the law has been made, passed, and ought to have been implemented since 18th April, I think they have to exercise their rights by approaching the court, initiating a suit against the government that have refused to abide by the law. Because once a law is made, it has been given a life, and anybody who refuses to be subject to the law is incurring the wrath of the same law and ought to be punished. That is constitutionalism. No authority is bigger than the law. Every authority is subject to the law, and any governor who refuses to abide by the law, who refuses to pay the workers the necessary amount of money included in the Minimum Wage Establishment Act, which increased the money from 18 to 30,000, it's subject to being dragged to the court.
But the governors have immunity.
They have immunity. You drag the government to court. That the governors have immunity means, well, what Section 308 of the 1999 Constitution construed by that immunity is that the governor as a person cannot be sued, but the government can be taken to court, especially by the labor.
Okay. The labor also said that they will come out and make any state whose governor refuses to pay this minimum wage, that they will lock down such state with protest. So do you think that protest is a way of approach, or going to court will be the best?
Protest is very good, but the most potent thing that could have been done was prior to the elections. The civil servants have the bulk of the votes. They were there when many governors came out to refuse. But I was shocked, like somewhere in Zamfara, they voted the APC. When a sitting governor is telling you he cannot pay you minimum wage as the chairman of Nigerian Governors Forum, owing you up to 60 months, you are electing a man he's bringing, and the man is preaching continuity for you, and we are voting for him. Continuity in non-payment of salary, continuity in sufferness, continuity in abject penury, and we are putting your thumbs for him, voting for APC. Where we could have gotten it right. In Nigeria, we like reactionary measures instead of proactive measures. We don't like tackling it from the start. They ought to have stopped any governor who, like Governor Samuel Ortom, have no business in government. He have no business in government as far as Benue State is concerned.
Why?
He has not paid workers. He has not done anything meaningful. Infrastructural development is zero. Nothing in Benue State to warrant a re-election. He only capitalized on the politics of Fulani headsmen, which he brought to fore, played sympathy politics, got into the minds of the gullible, and is re-elected. But now that his re-election has taken effect, we are seeing a new thing. When will he pay the workers?
There is a tribunal.
And how are we sure
there is even a tribunal injunction to his re-election for second term. So hopefully, the court will have to do justice to the people's mandate. However, we leave that to the tribunal. You talked about deliberate, I can refer to it as deliberate mischief on the part of governors who even refuse to pay the minimum 18, not to talk of the 30. Now, if the 18,000 naira are being owed, and the Minister of Labour is saying that governors who have not started paying the 30,000 are already owing 1 month. Now, collectively, like in Benue and in Zamfara and in other states, Kogi State governors who have not been paying. And
it's been for over 30 months.
30 months, that is 2 years plus, and it's still coming back. I learned he's aspiring to be governor again. Now, if these governors are owing backlogs of salaries, and they still want to, they are telling them to pay the 30,000 minimum wage. If you join the number of years or months that they are owing with this 1 month of increment to the 30,000 that they have not paid, are you certain that they will have such fund to clearing the arrears and entering into this new minimum wage?
The problem with our governors is their insincerity, the egocentricness. They are selfish. They do not care about the masses. If they do care about the masses, in fact, anybody who cannot pay salary has no business in governance.
Good.
So I think the governors can be able to pay. They can be able to start from somewhere, even if you don't pay up. If you're in somebody 60 months, how does the person survive? Even if it's 10, you pay once. Let the person have something. But I know all they do is politics. They do not care about the welfare of the people. Any governor who does not have the economic acumen to generate money from the states and also collect money from the federal government, add together and pay salary, does not have business in government. Because most of them don't have infrastructural.
What is even coming from the federal government is not little, it's more than the internally generated revenue in their various states. Mr. Jeff, do you have another perspective to the topic of discussion today?
Yeah.
All right, let me hear you out.
From my best of understanding, the entitlement of minimum wage as that amount of remunerational entitlement from either an employer of labor to an income earner has a long way to go. It's a policy designed a kind of to bridge in the gap of the income earners. You get me?
Yeah.
And not just that, you get me? To bridge the poverty level in the system.
Okay.
In essence, when the president was like assenting this bill into law.
Remember, the president, he said governors who are not paying should not be voted, and then some people are bringing governors for continuity, especially you mentioned the APC government in Zamfara State.
Yes.
But I want you to also know that the president himself is a member of the All Progressive Congress, and he has brought these striking policies we are reviewing here this morning. You understand? So it is not about the party, it's about the political willingness of the person in charge. I just want to get that clear.
Yes, yes.
Go ahead, Mr.
So, to my best of understanding, the essence of this minimum wage bill was at least to give life to those who are not privileged to have that entitlement, you get me, to meet up with other economic needs. And in this regard, it is, in short, it baffles me a lot that a lot of governors in Nigeria have failed the responsibility of governance to the extent of coming out openly to give us fake promises and excuses to why they cannot meet up with the obligation of payment, which has become the common entitlement of any government of a state.
Of course.
Okay, let me just go down to a kind of a memory lane to the situation in Kogi, and likewise that of Zamfara.
Okay.
You can imagine a state governor who is not willing to pay the workers in Zamfara, at the same time crying for a justice of second term. I mean the governor that had just lost his case at the Supreme Court.
It is that same governor that has taken the federal government to court that why should the federal government make the NFIU an overseer of the joint account.
The joint account.
And so this is where their juicy sources is coming from. You understand? They want to continue to, play.
You don't know what.
Yeah.
They have make it a style of life, the kind of a lifestyle.
Now, do they have what we call internally generated revenue access to IGR? These governors, do they have access things that could generate, revenue for them from the economic aspect?
Yeah.
What would you have to say about this?
Let me tell you something.
Yeah.
Every state in Nigeria has a source of revenue generation, either directly or indirectly.
Okay, example?
Okay, for instance, let me just go back to the same Zamfara. Okay. You cannot tell me that there is no commercial activities ongoing in Zamfara. There are. The revenue generated from the market activities and all of the trade and commerce activities within the state is enough. But you don't know what? This revenue generation was supposed to be an added value to the federal allocation coming to the state as the state entitlement, in a sense that whenever the entitlement is not enough to meet up with the obligation of payment, you put up from the internally generated revenue to meet up such obligation. Then, in essence, the entitlement of that internally generated revenue is clearly designed on infrastructural activities and empowerment. But tell me, among the states in Nigeria, how many of them have you ever seen a blueprint of any kind of, economic empowerment scheme from any of the state governors before? And it's so unfortunate that whenever you see them, they are always crying loud to the federal government, always accusing the federal government of the entitlement of the welfare of even the civil servant in the state.
And some of them even demand the overhead cost, security vote, and so on. And when these monies are given to them, they seem to forget about the general populace.
And let me even make you understand something. In terms of that security vote, do you know, I even come to realize that from the way that our Nigerian cultural politics, I call it cultural politics, you get me? Because there is no epitome of democratic system inside anymore. It has to do with the particular interests of a few and only for the few, with that motive of cultural orientation. You get me?
I don't want you to go into the cultural orientation. I want you to dwell on the economic aspect of these very policies and the productivity it promises, the prospect of the productivity we are expecting, in the ministries, the departments, the agencies of both the private and the public enterprises we have in the country. Now, I will come back to you again. And Mr. Silvanus, I want you to also get ready because we are going to, seal this very policy today and nail it and probably set agenda for the governors, not the president anymore. Because the federal government they have exonerated themselves and
readiness.
They've also demonstrated they are ready to lead the country and bring the lower cadres of civil servants and public servants to limelight, to benefit, to come out of penury and poverty. And the onus now are on the what? The state governors. The state governors and employers of labor to do justice to the minimum wage. Because if you check what the area the federal government is coming out from, if you check like it was just on screen, among the OPEC nation who were the least before paying the minimum wage. But now we are no longer in number, we are at first at number 9. But now we're at number 7, which means we dropped 2. We are ahead of 2 countries among the OPEC, the oil-producing and economic countries that produces oil. You understand? So the minimum wage issue is not a policy that anybody will come and be joking with it. It has to deal with livelihood. Shortly after this break, we'll come again, we'll dig more on this issue.
You might not know the weight, but if you join me, Eunice Johnson, on Issues of the Moment, you definitely will find out all the answers you are looking for regarding burning issues ranging from politics, religion, economy, just name it. Issues of the Moment is your information hub.
Of leadership is a factor in this regard to the success of the fight against the Boko Haram terrorists. And then you look at also the factor of morale.
Mr. Silvanus, welcome back to Spectacle.
Thank you.
Mr. Samuel, welcome back.
Thank you.
Now, you were saying something about the IGR, and that is the internally generated revenue cut across states. And I said that the federal government have done their part. The federal allocation coming from oil revenue has been disbursed as usual. You know, the 36 states get their disbursements, including the FCT, and then they tend to forget the aspect of utilizing what we call the internally generated revenue, even for their workers, to kind of alleviate their workers at the state level. So, do you think that the IGR is not there, or it is being consumed by what we call financial embezzlement or misappropriation?
Well, there is no definition other than a same definition for financial embezzlement and misappropriation.
Yes.
It's all tuned down to the corners of what we call corruption. You get me? You know, there is something about governance that a lot of people are failing to understand in details and in practical kind of aspect of it. And this is, as a state government, you get me, you are not only entitled to pay the wages of the workers of the state, because that is not the only entitlement of the state. Under the government practice, you get me? We have the security there. We have welfare. It is only when you employ, you can pay. And when you happen not to employ, how do you pay? And let me tell you,
the law even,
these things still accumulate down to what we call social vices. And at the same time, when this particular situation accumulates to an extent whereby it can no longer be controlled, you get me? It becomes a liability to the state welfare.
So you are talking about economic situation could lead to social vices,
of course,
in the society.
Of course.
This policy as implemented already by the FG, do you see any legal technicality coming out on the side of the governors?
No, Nigerian politics, if everybody came into power on the ladder of the people to serve the best interest of the masses, to contribute their quotas to to the development of the country. I do not see anybody challenging such a pro-people policy.
But some of the governors are saying that it is not on their concurrent whatever list, that is an exclusive list of the federal government. But the federal government said that this very policy is an exclusive legislative bill number 34. The list number 34. So what does that mean?
You know, when you talk about a federal system of government, we have stages of the law. The exclusive law is exclusively reserved for the federal government to make. It deals with security and other items that might be included by the National Assembly. The residual lists are also in the exclusive reserve of the states to act on it, to make laws on it. And that of the concurrent is where the federal and the state both can make laws on. But the law of the federal government supersedes.
Okay, that of the concurrent is where the federal government
and the state government can act on.
And where they seems to disagree.
That of the federal government supersedes.
That of the federal government supersedes. So in this case, the state government cannot go to their state assembly and say, make a law and that we are paying 20,000 minimum wage or 18,000 minimum wage.
There is what is called in constitutional law the principle of covering the field. The principle of covering the field simply means that if a federal government makes a law covering a particular area or a particular item, the states are statute barred. That is, they are ineligible to make laws.
They are status barred.
They are statutes barred.
Okay.
They are ineligible to make laws on the same item, negating, opposing that of the federal government. So no state government, whether the law was rightfully made or not, can make a counter law negating the 30,000 naira minimum wage on the principle of covering the field, which is in our jurisprudence in the Constitution.
Okay, in this case now, good. It means it is the exclusive legislative list number 34 that is going to go upheld.
That will be the supreme law of the land on minimum wage.
On minimum wage right now. So what do you think would happen to an erring governor, or an erring governor, I mean to say?
The courts, the law will take its course. I don't think any governor would bring up such frivolous case to waste the time of the courts, because the law has already been made by a valid parliament.
So they will not waste the time of the court.
You can't waste the time of the court with a frivolous case. The case cannot stand. It cannot stand. I don't advise any governor to dabble into it. It will be a waste of time and resources.
But do you think they can pay?
I know that they can pay. But I do know that many governors in Nigeria, being politicians, selfish, self-centered, lack the political will to do the needful. Any governor who says he or she cannot pay should step aside. Let competent people come on board.
But you know that it is in our behavior in this part of the world that we don't resign from office easily.
Then I think the other constitutional means should be explored to remove the governor. Wow. Impeachment processes can be initiated.
And when most of the assembly members are subject to the governor?
We recall the ones that are subject to the governor. We must try exercising our rights entrenched in the Constitution. It is high time we started. Honestly, this we are getting sane. So it is high time.
Do you know that the process of recalling a lawmaker is cumbersome than electing him?
It is very simple if the people are.
It is even easier to remove a sitting president than to remove a lawmaker.
A lawmaker can be removed if the will is there, if the people know what they want, if they are indeed, if workers come together. We are talking of people signing, voters. Who are the voters?
So if the labor force, any governor that refuses to pay, the labor can lock down the state. And then what I could consider lock down the state, let there be a kind of a state of emergency, and then the governor removed. Because if you are talking about process of impeaching the governor by the legislative house, that is the State House of Assembly, it will take ages because most of them are either rubber stamp affiliated to the governor and so on, or being sponsored by one godfather that is having connection with the governor and so on and so forth. You understand? Except now that we have the same financial autonomy given to the state assemblies. I think from there, I think the president have vision. President Muhammadu Buhari have vision. So now the state assemblies are no longer waiting for the state governor for emolument. Their money comes directly from the FG.
This is a good
and I think it will motivate them to work. So we're also praying that of the local government autonomy be made, feasible and, to take effect from now, so that governance will be all about the people, for the people, and by the people, which is democracy. What do you have to say? Now, Mr. Jeff, let me come back to you. Samuel Awulegbe, my foremost economist. What do you think is the effectiveness of this minimum wage on the lives of the civil servants?
Well, the effectiveness of this minimum wage depend on factors like, you understand, because...
I don't understand here, you've not said it.
Yeah, I'm about to.
Okay.
When you discuss effectiveness, certainly you must have to look into certain factors of analysis. You understand that has to do with the workers' welfare and other subjective economic kind of embodiment.
Or indices.
Yeah, but I prefer embodiment to that. Okay. So, like in this case, one of the factors, you get me, to be discussed is the extent at which the workers' protection and employment is being protected, you get me, has a long way to go. Because in certain situations like this, when the state governors have found it lacking, you get me, in that process of carrying out their kind of, their constitutional obligation, you understand? Before you know it, they begin to devise means of how to cut down costs, thereby creating retrenchment and other forms of a kind of anti-workers.
You just hit a nail on the head. Still on retrenchment and artificial workers. Some people, I don't know whether the minimum wage will have review on ghost workers, because some states have just of recent, retrenched some workers. They are claimed to be what? Ghost workers. Then later they went on to say they are introducing what we call table payment of salaries in order to catch those who are ghost workers. It happened in Benue, and I think it also happened in Kogi, in states who are not paying salaries. You understand? And this ghost worker syndrome, some of the states later, state governors and after investigation said these persons were not actually ghost workers, that they did it probably in order to have...
That was like the state of Benue state governance. He was accusing, you get me, the former godfather of the ruling party as a then, which is Senator Akume, having so much power of influence on the financial welfare of the state. And according to him, it was the same plight of how to meet up a kind of, I don't know how to even use the best English to use in these times, because
to meet up, he reviewed...
To meet up with their a kind of anti-social...
Whatever. Now, if you're talking about, he's saying the influence of the godfather, Akume was never the governor even before or Tom. So Swan was the governor.
No, but I am talking of they both are from the same party as a then. And you remember, even when Akume himself was against the governor of the state, like denying him the mandate of the APC as at that time, you understand, with the plight that he wasn't, you get me, the right mandate for the masses and as well for the growth of Benue State.
Okay, does that mean that he will now go and retrench workers sudden afternoon and say that these are ghost workers? 3,000 workers retrenched in Benue State as of then. And later he ordered their reabsorption, that they should be absorbed back to the to the civil working force. So what could you say about that? It means they are playing politics with people's emolument
the thing
and
is,
people's welfare.
Can I talk?
Yeah, talk.
The thing is, it's not about.
Because we're talking about the effectiveness of this minimum wage.
Exactly.
And every worker have the right, to this emolument, these wages.
Okay, the question is this now. The people retrenched as at that time that have been deprived their payment entitlement for 1 or 2, 3 occasions for almost more than a year. As at that time to now.
Yes, they have not been, even
Hold
those
on.
we have
As
have
they
not
have
been
been
paid.
Thank you. As they have been called back to the system, what happened to the old money?
That is what I'm asking you now. That was what I asked.
So, in
Mr.
essence, I am
Stevanus.
trying to tell you that it is a device, you get me, of how to exploit them. It's a perpetual device of exploitation.
Good.
And these ideologies stem deeply down to the people within the system. And I must tell you, people from the local government setting that are connected to the governors, based on 1 or 2, 3 interests of...
They don't see anything wrong with
exactly.
it. They don't see anything wrong with it.
It's so unfortunate that I think there was a time a senator from Benue State went down to Port Harcourt to commission a project, and he was up on air with a microphone addressing the masses there in River State, telling them that whenever he comes to commission project like this, he feels very, very kind of pleased. And all of a sudden, he became one of the architects of the same body that led to the re-election of the Benue State government in question, of which he was insulting there on stage, empowering the youth with wheelbarrow.
Now, it means...
So the thing is, when the political leaders of our various constituencies begin to lack the will and that consciousness of what true leadership is all about,
so
the state fails.
Okay, in essence, most of the ineffectiveness of the workers are largely on the part of what our political leaders who do not have willingness of leadership.
Exactly. And that
even
is because...
to implement and execute policies like this.
Yeah, exactly. And that is because they look at it from party benefit, which is not of the masses. You know, there is a difference between political party and even the masses.
Of course.
Because the political party is just a congregation of certain individuals whose scope and ideology is within the confines of their belief.
And their
you understand? And their interest.
And for power.
Exactly. Why the masses are there, you get me, to receive at the end. Then, do I...
Now, good. You stop there. Mr. Stevanus, he hinted a point about political unwillingness in the effectiveness of implementation or the productivity this minimum wage will have on the civil servant. He also cited an instance where it looks like agreed with what you said, that a kind of pliable, makes the civil servants, dejected and rejected so that they can bring crumbs to them and say, vote for us. But this time, the federal government have issued a stern warning that all emolument, whether passed from the 18,000 and passed the 1 month 30,000 and everything should be paid henceforth. If the federal government is the one bringing out this fund from the federal allocation, you understand? And in the state, you still have the IGR, and you have a body in the state, the Inland Revenue, to oversee. Wouldn't it be nice for these governors and employers to look at, the welfare of the common masses, jettisoning the ideology of political party, jettisoning the ideology of self-interest, and for once, let governance be about the people?
Let me first say legally that the warning, this 10 warning you made mention of from Ngige, though for the people, does not hold legal waters. Why did I say that? In a federal system of government, the state government is independent of the federal.
But you just talked about a concurrent list and the exclusive list.
The law,
and how that law
binds the state government. Okay. But the warning, issuing warning to the state governments is not constitutional. It can be political, but it doesn't have constitutional weight.
But the policy itself has constitutional
backing.
Binding on the governors.
Binding on the governors. But the warning of Ngige to state governors does not hold legal waters. Having said that, I must add that there is an urgent need to change the current crop of leadership in the Nigerian political system, starting with all the governors.
Yes,
anybody who cannot take care of the welfare of the people, is one of the primary purposes of the government. If you read section 17 of the Constitution, subsection 2 down, you will see the main purpose of a government. That if any government fails to meet up with these purposes, the government should cease to exist.
How could that be? How could that happen? Is it the people who are singing praises of these governors that will make the government cease? Or is it the institution of the judiciary that will come and make the government cease or make the governor step aside? Who are those to institute such stepping aside?
In an attempt to make Nigeria a better place, yes. Every sector is critical, and their contributions is most valuable. If you look at the people, we start with elections. Why is election conducted periodically? To assess the performance of a government, see if we can give them our mandate again or not. But what they do, they really affect us.
Don't forget the aspect of rigging. That these people, these governors have amassed wealth to trillions, and they can buy anybody in order to come to power. You understand? So some of us are unbuyable. We are standing by the people because we set agenda for the people and for the government. Now, if you look at what the scenario of the election process that just happened from February to March, you discover that states where civil servants were crying, seriously crying, looking for a way to remove their governors, eventually such governors emerged. And not that the people voted them. How would you say about such things?
Some governors have learned the trick. It might not be election rigging per se, but it's vote buying. Intelligent vote buying.
Just like you said.
Before election, few weeks or few months to the election, you see the governors becoming friendly. Even when you are doing naming ceremony, a governor might come in, uninvited, bring out money. You see them become unnecessarily good. You see them walking about, grading roads that they will abandon immediately after election. This is what they do, and the earlier we discover these tricks, the better for us.
Good.
We must discover the tricks that any governor that does not work in 3 years, and for the fourth year, where during approaching election period, he starts working, it is insincere. And we must run away from such a person. Any governor that does not pay salary and prior to the election, you see him paying 2 months, 3 months. You see him declaring that somebody was holding the salary of the people. Stay away from the person. There are things we must stay away from if Nigeria must get to that place of our
The president said it himself. The president said that any governor before the March election, 2019 election, that any governor who does not pay salary should not be voted by the people.
Yes.
But we saw that most of these governors came back re-elected. So now, salary...
We have instances where the governors who did not pay salaries were removed. Adamawa, he was removed. Yes. He didn't perform. In Bauchi, he didn't perform. It was clear. So Nigerians are gaining that consciousness.
And I believe
we are starting with
and in Kogi State.
Look at him from within his party. They have refused to give him tickets.
Okay, good. I love that. And in Benue, who didn't even pay salary, he was.
And PDP accepted him. It is high time our political parties become the moral consciousness of the
PDP
people.
gave him a 60% slot of the party structure.
We must learn how to refuse
and
them
he
tickets.
seized public servants' allowances from December 2018 to this moment and conducted his election, and up till now has not made any effort to pay them back. So he's still the governor. So in this regard, what do you think Labour should do or the law should do to removing such governors?
I think first we must start, because we have made mention of party, and we see what APC is doing in Kogi State. Our parties must be imbibed by a certain standard. That if so person does not meet this criteria, people have antecedents, especially public office holders, politicians.
So the factor of party politics
Party
and affiliation
politics,
comes into
money
governance.
bags must leave party politics. Tickets must be given to credible persons who can fly the agenda and the ideology of the party. Because when such persons fail, Nigerians hold the party responsible. In Kogi State, if APC succeeds in replacing Yahaya Bello with a better candidate, I see Nigerians backing the APC in future elections, because they have demonstrated the willingness to side the people, to be on the side of the people, to make sure that not anybody can not be, nobody is too important to be spared. When you are not performing, we remove you. Our party is not a party for nonsense. You understand?
Now,
we don't condone it.
Again, thank you very much on that. If you look at the oil producing and export countries, you will discover that all the while, the 18,000 minimum wage that Nigeria has been dwelling on was even the least among the oil producing and exporting countries. I'm talking about the OPEC. So now that we have gone into what? We have gone into a 30,000 minimum wage. I think we have overtaken Venezuela and Iran among the oil producing and exporting countries. And do you think internationally, in terms of exchange of dollars and inflation and so on, could affect this policy in the country? I'm talking to you, Mr. Economist, because we are talking about the effectiveness of this policy in terms of productivity.
Well, I think by implication of this minimum wage, you get me, and value-added tax, first, you have to consider certain factors in the areas of high inflation rate. From there, then you begin to look at the interest rate of every borrowed capital.
Okay.
And in this regard,
the interest rate will go high?
of course, it works hand in hand.
And they should know that it's just 12,000 increment.
Yeah. And the tendency of why this increment is subject to go high is because the higher the income earns, you get me, is subject to the propensity of what.
You have to break it down to a layman level by giving
it's okay.
examples.
I'll go there. So it's subject to what, you get me, he goes for. Let's assume if you are a kind of an income earner of maybe on the average of 60,000 naira, you get me, and you approach a bank for a loan. First of all, they will ask you what is your income status. From that income status, they can equally define to the period of time whereby whatever they are giving you, you get me, can be sustained. So if an income earner, somebody who is on the income rate, you get me, of 30,000 naira, from the rise of 18,000 naira to 30,000 naira, automatically is given a rise, you get me, to the level of whatever loan is
seeking for.
Exactly.
And that will make money be in circulation.
That is the inflationary side.
Okay, if money is in circulation,
Yeah.
It has negative effect?
It has both negative and positive effect.
Okay. Okay, what are the negative, where are the areas
Well,
of the negative effects?
The areas of the negative effect are this.
Because people want to have money in their pocket. I particularly want to have money always and dish it out to my people, you understand? Make friends with money, give money out and help people out of their poverty.
Yeah, the sincere part of it is when you discuss inflation in these circumstances, it comes in two phases. You get me?
Okay.
One is demand push inflation. You get me? Then you also you also look at the other side of the inflation, which is cost push.
Cost push and demand push.
Exactly.
What is the demand push?
The demand push, you get me? Inflation has to do with the level of the demands of commodities, you get me, that leads to that circulation of the inflow of cash in circulation. Why cost push? Also has to do with the deriving force, you get me, of that release of cash into circulation by either a kind of payment entitlement and otherwise.
That is cost push.
Yeah, no. That's cost push.
Yeah, cost push. All right. So in essence, the Nigerian civil service, whatever, will be productive now.
You cannot just justify productiveness by implementation of a policy. You get me?
A minimum wage.
Exactly.
Minimum
minimum wage is a policy.
It's a
You get
policy,
me?
yes. You say a policy, so I want to say the policy of minimum wage. Now, if you have money and you are a worker, you are being motivated, to work and your salary increase. Don't you know that don't you think that your productivity will increase? I'm an analyst now, I'm a presenter here, and suddenly my boss said, I push your money to this and increase my salaries and emolument. Don't you think I'll be more creative, bring out ideas? But
there is something you need to know on the other side of every increment. You get me? See, when you begin to look at the futures of policies of increment of wages like this minimum wage, there are a kind of a complementary effect, you get me, of them. Why? Because sometimes when you implement policies of this kind, you get me, and you don't have the resources to meet up with the payment obligation, you get me, it becomes a flop.
All right.
So whatever policies you are entitling to, you get me, should be subject to the level of the revenue at your disposal.
Okay, good. Thank you. I have got what I want from you, especially the effectiveness of this very policy and the productivity aspect. It is on two sides, and you made mention of demand cost and cost demand
cost and cost push.
Cost push. Good. Mr. Silvanus, on the last note, do you see sustainability of this law, of this policy?
Yes, of course. What we just need is the political will on the part of the governors.
Do you think the next administration will continue from this policy and upward review?
It is a law.
Already.
What we expect is that the next administration will make it higher, maybe 100,000 naira, who knows?
All right. Today we stop today on spectacle, and we will continue with another striking topic tomorrow. Please join us. Our addresses are still on the screen, and you can reach out via them.
You might not know the depth, you might not know the weight, but if you join me, Eunice Johnson, on Issues of the Moment, you definitely will find out all the answers you are looking for regarding burning issues ranging from politics, religion, economy, just name it. Issues of the Moment is your information hub.